Today we'll be bringing you 25 tips I personally wish I knew before I started playing Valorant. Probably used to a small radius, that once you make it far enough away, you might take 1 or 2 bits of weapons can take you down with a single bullet. When playing the round with a shield, there are important things to remember. 1. You can't heal shield health. 2. When you take damage and have shield health remaining, both numbers will diminish together. 3. You will need to rebuy your shield if you take any damage in the previous round. We recommend rebuying a heavy shield if you go below 25 in the previous round and have the funds to spare. Tip number 11. When looking for a rifle to buy in Valorant, your eyes instantly drift to the Vandal and Phantom. These $2,900 rifles are beasts in-game, but sometimes it is difficult to decide which one to choose. Based on the price, you might automatically think that they do the same damage, but they don't. The Vandal does 156 damage to the head at any range, making it an instant kill, but the Phantom will only inflict 150 damage at very short distances, and anything beyond that radius will require at least 2 bullets to kill. To make up for the difference in damage, the gun has a larger magazine size and a faster rate of fire. These stats might change over time as Riot begins to balance these two guns in the beta. Now, we haven't talked about the bomb site yet, so let's do that. Tip 12. The spike in Valorant has a 45-second timer until detonation right after being planted. It's 5 seconds more lenient than CSGO, which has a 40-second bomb timer. The 45 seconds is more than enough time to rotate all players near the site and clear the attackers, so don't feel too rushed. Tip number 13. The spike takes 7.5 seconds to fully defuse. Instead of doing it all in one shot, you can get off the defuse at the halfway point and it'll save your progress. This is extremely useful because you can half-fake the bomb by getting off after the halfway mark to kill the remaining attackers. It also compensates for the fact that there are no defuse kits in Valorant. Tip number 14 is an important one, so listen up. When playing any hero/agent with a res, teleport, or dash ability, it's important to remember that after you use it, you will not be able to shoot your gun for a specific amount of time. This is especially important when playing Omen, because he has 2 of these abilities. His Shrouded Step ability can have up to 2 charges and allows him to teleport a short distance to get into unexpected places or catch an enemy off guard with an unexpected reposition. Once the ability is started, it takes 1 second for the animation to complete, and when your agent appears in the new location, it takes an additional second to pull out your gun and have it ready to fire. In this additional second, it is easy for an enemy to kill you as you cannot move or fire. So, instead of teleporting right next to an enemy, instead use it to switch up positions or get into angles that your enemies are not expecting in a safer way, like teleporting closer to sight or teleporting inside a smoke. This delay does not only affect Omen, and any resurrection abilities like Sage's Resurrection or Phoenix's Run It Back has a slightly longer delay that should only be used while having substantial cover. Alright, now on to number 15. Coming from a game like Overwatch or Fortnite, you might have to get used to standing still to shoot, but with shotguns, that issue isn't a problem. In Valorant, to be accurate with most guns consistently, you have to stand still when firing, but with either the Judge or the Bucky, the rule is not the same. Feel free to run and jump while being accurate with these weapons. Also, with Jett's passive float, she can use updraft to get high in the sky and peek some unexpected angles, all while being perfectly accurate with these 2 guns. Tip number 16, a very important mechanic in Valorant is the ability to aim down sights. Coming from a game like Rainbow Six Siege or Call of Duty, players will feel right at home with Valorant's version of sights in the game, but there are certainly things that are different from gun to gun that I wish I knew when I started playing Valorant. The difference with all the sights in Valorant is when spraying, you will notice your crosshair moving. This is the crosshair adjusting to the recoil from that gun. The next difference is that when zoomed in with the Bulldog or the Stinger, the guns have burst fire mode activated. When zoomed in, the burst consists of 3 bullets that can be deceivingly lethal. The third difference is the difference in zoom percentages. On most weapons, the zoom percentage is 25, but for the Guardian, the zoom is doubled to 50%. For the 2 snipers, if zoomed once, you can see 2.5 times the normal distance, and with the Operator, you can double zoom it for 5 times of the normal magnification. Tip number 17, Omen's ultimate can be scary, but you can tell exactly when he's teleporting when your minimap starts to burn. This, on top of a globally heard voice line, should give you plenty of heads up that he might be in your backline. For a bonus tip, try not to run backwards when he's ulting. Instead, just post up and watch your flank. he might just walk into your crosshairs. Tip number 18, nearing the end, guys. If you've stuck it all the way over here, it means that you're probably going to get good at Valorant. I want to remind you guys to click the sub button if you want to get really, really good at Valorant, because we're going to be posting a ton of incredible content from CSGO pros and the likes. And also, we will be supporting Valorant coaching very, very soon on ProGuides.com. If you want to get better at Valorant or any other game, you have to go to ProGuides.com and find a coach right now who will play with you, get you better at the game, identify your weaknesses, and say, you know what? You can get better because of X, Y, and Z. Do that now, and you'll probably go pro. Alright, now on to tip number 18. Cypher can trigger his cyber cage through walls. This is great for slowing down pushes safely and buying your team time to rotate. If you don't want to peek the choke point, you can always trigger your traps from behind cover. Offensively, you can throw these down to cover your flank and pop them when your enemies get close. For the next tip, Breach can actually shoot his breaching abilities at walls. This is a big misconception about Breach. He doesn't have to be right up next to the wall to use them. He can shoot Flashpoint from a distance so his team can peek off of it quickly and secure the frag. I wish I knew this when I started playing so I didn't wedge myself into corners every time I used one of these abilities. Be sure to experiment with all the corners and walls you can shoot abilities through too. The game is brand new, so getting that small edge in your opponents is much, much better. Tip number 20, teleporters are a big part of the game, and it's important you know them inside and out. Teleports can be faked by throwing a weapon or ability through them. The loud teleport sound will play, tricking your enemies into thinking you went through. If you coordinate this with a whole team, you can completely fake the opposite site with no players near it. Sage's slow orbs work great to fake out the sound. I've been caught by this a few times, so be careful in your own games. But when we made this video, this was the case. We'll see what Riot does. Tip 21 is a short one. Don't expect your gun to be completely accurate while shift walking. Walking accuracy is not a thing in Valorant, as you need to be completely still to get optimal weapon accuracy. If you're peeking around a corner, make sure to stop moving if you're about to shoot. Tip number 22, wall running. Look at the minimap and you'll see a faint ring around your agent. This circle shows you the range of which your footsteps can be heard. This is a big one. If you have to rotate across the map, use this to know when to stop running and start walking. Sound is a big part of information in Valorant, and giving off your position is generally unfavorable. At the same time, don't walk across the entire map on rotations because it'll waste a lot of time. Finding the right balance of running and walking can be the difference in becoming an efficient player. For our 23rd tip, we have some tips on how to use Sova's arrows effectively. If you're coming from CSGO, you know that skyboxes can block smokes thrown from across the map, but in Valorant there is no need to worry. In Valorant there are no pesky skyboxes, and with either Sova's Shock Bolt or Recon Bolt, you can have some insane lineups to catch your opponents unaware and maybe steal a frag or two. For our 24th tip, we have Jett's passive ability to float. When falling from high ground, Jett will float, causing her to be inaccurate and slow, but able to glide, making it possible to get to places your enemies might not expect without even using an ability. This can be used on any round and can even be combined with tip number 16 for some sick aerial shotgun kills. And for our last tip, we have some ways of saving some cash. As you may know, you can right-click your gun and get your gun or any ability you purchase in the same buy phase to get a full refund. Just right-click. But did you know that if your shield was damaged, even just by 1 point in the previous round, you can get charged full price for the purchase, and if you resell it, you do not get your old shield points back. So just be cautious when rebuying a heavy or light shield, as it could cost you. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, if you want to see content like this, click that sub button. We're going to be doing so much content to get you guys better at the game. So if that's something that interests you, then absolutely.
Ever wonder why it seems like your opponent keeps knowing your position without you ever having given them information, or always stacking the site that your team was going towards even though you were completely silent? Well, the answer is not always wall hacks.
What's going on, Pro Guides fam? I'm Kangas, and today I'm bringing you a new series called Improvement Saturdays, where every Saturday we break down an aspect of tactical FPS games so that you guys can better understand the game at a higher level. Today we're going to cover a more advanced FPS concept of mind games, and how defaults and information gathering factor into the bigger picture of how you control the pace of a match and net yourself the win. So let's hop right into it.
Oh, and if you find that you have trouble implementing these concepts or ideas into your gameplay, don't worry, we also got you covered. Our rating and immortal level coaches on our website are more than happy to help you understand mind games or any other aspect of Valorant to a higher level. This is how I learned all these concepts myself, so I highly recommend it. Plus, we recently partnered with Scream from Team Liquid to release a course detailing the way of the duelist, and how you can take the potential of the duelist class to the absolute maximum, so make sure to check that out too if you're interested on ProGuides.com. So before we talk about mind games and how they factor into a shooter like Valorant, we first need to understand what the concept of a mind game actually is. Mind games are a series of actions or responses meant to have a psychological effect on another player with the intent of gaining a competitive advantage. When we talk about psychological effects, this could either be fear, respect, a false sense of confidence, pridefulness, confusion, or really any other emotion that could affect an enemy's gameplay. Most players play the game with a level of critical thinking, and this only becomes more relevant at higher ranks. Psychological effects directly impact critical thinking and can cause players to make unsafe decisions and push too far, or play too safe and therefore give your team free map control. Our goal is to first be able to read what the enemy is intending to do, and then find a way to counter their play or manipulate them to do what we want using mind games. If you are successfully able to control their actions or be aware of the psychological effects that drive their actions, then you now have a competitive advantage over the enemy in the form of information and clarity. For example, one easy psychological effect to notice is fear. If your team decides to rush A site on Haven but gets shut down in spectacular fashion, and I'm talking couldn't even get the bomb planted and their enemy Reyna just got a 4K from backside, then you're more likely than not going to challenge that site again. And if you do, you're going to be extra careful in entering the site, which may slow down the take and give enemies valuable time to rotate. This is the effect of fear, which is a naturally occurring psychological effect that every player has dealt with at some point, whether they were aware of it or not. On the other hand, the same thing can be said with the opposite result. Your team decides to rush A site. You guys absolutely destroy the defense, and your team secures an easy round with little casualties. Well, this can strike fear into the defenders, which could result in them deciding to play retake the next time that you enter their site, or even cause them to call for rotates much more quickly than before. Knowing this, even if you were entered the exact same way that you did last time, the enemy's responses are different and can affect the outcome of the round. This, at its core, is mind games. As a continuation of the latter example, let's just say that you decide to take advantage of their fear by faking A site instead. Because the defenders are on edge and fear your teams execute onto the site, they call for rotates as soon as your Sova shoots his dart into A and they hear a set of footsteps from your jet who's selling the fake. Meanwhile, your team is moving towards the other side of the map and getting ready to entry into C site. Because their team was quick on the
Hello, Pro Guys. Guys, family, and welcome back to another video. My name is Dan, and today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest mistakes that low elo players make. But before we reveal it to you, you know what time it is. It's time for the question of the day. Today's question is, what is your favorite way to take a site? Do you like calm, cool, and calculated plays with proper smokes and flashes to mind game and incapacitate the enemy? Or do you prefer the rush B, no stop, and obliterating any resistance? There is a time and a place for each, but I think everyone has a favorite. Personally, I just like to rush when I'm playing unrated or just trying to relax, but if I'm trying to play seriously, nothing quite beats that perfectly executed play. Remember to leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and with that, let's get into the video. Imagine you're trying to push onto a site. You have an Omen on your team who smokes off an important angle or two, and you and your team push onto the site and secure the spike plant. Now, let's say that instead of an Omen, you have a Brimstone on your team. He smokes off the same angles as the Omen, and you and your team push onto site and secure a spike plant. Do you know what the difference between these two scenarios is? Yes, one of them has an Omen and one has a Brimstone, but other than that, is there really that much of a difference? Well, the answer is yes. Actually, there is a huge difference. The biggest mistake that low elo players make is grouping up agents as just person who smokes, person who flashes, person who gets kills. Let's rewind a little bit and go back over each of these scenarios, but a little bit more in depth this time around. Let's say we're playing on Bind, and you and your team wants to push through hookah onto site to plant the spike. Having an Omen versus a Brimstone drastically changes the different options you have available to take the site. An Omen will most likely smoke off CT and elbow while lurking around either B long or even A. He will enable your team to get onto site while striking from behind or causing chaos on site to draw attention towards him. A Brimstone, on the other hand, will most likely be sticking with the team, throwing down the smokes in the same positions, but being ready to trade any teammates that may fall while pushing site and retreating back to a safe area once spike is down to make use of his molly and stim beacons. All we did was change the agent who was smoking off important angles, and we have just fundamentally changed our game plan. However, today's video is not on how different agents play. Rather, it's how to take advantage of the type of utility that your agent brings to the table, and how to understand how to play around the different types of utility. First up today, we're going to be talking about smokes and the different types of agents that have them. Generally, smokes tend to land on controller class agents like Brimstone, Omen, and Viper, but duelists like Jet and Sentinels like Cypher also have access to their own version of smokes as well. A big part of utility in Valorant is understanding how all the different smokes work and how long they last. For example, walking through an enemy Brimstone smoke is a lot safer than walking through an enemy Jet smoke because you know that the Brimstone is focused on blocking off specific lines of sight and might not be playing super close to the smoke trying to get kills. Jet, on the other hand, is an agent designed around frag hunting, so she is most likely going to be pushing through her own smoke or playing around it, waiting for someone to either push through or make too much noise on the other side of it so she can get a free pick. It is understanding how each agent wants to play around the utility that will shoot you up in ranks. It's not just important to know how each agent will play around their smoke, but how they will attempt to utilize their smoke in different ways. For example, Viper is the best agent currently for creating one-way lineups with her poison orb. So if you see a Viper cloud in a seemingly weird area with a gap at the bottom, be careful as there might be a Viper biting at ankles nearby. Smokes and utility in general are also not just intended for blocking off lines of sight for a push, they can also do wonders in playing mind games with your enemy. One of my favorite tactics as Brimstone is that if I still have access to 2 or 3 smokes and I'm in a retake, sometimes I place all my smokes around the bomb so that no angle can actually see it. Then I tap the bomb and move into one of my smokes. 9 times out of 10, the remaining players will run towards the bomb trying to kill the diffuser and panic when they aren't getting the kill. Wait for the footsteps to grow louder, then exit the smoke and enjoy your free flash. Flashes are also super important to know how to use correctly and how they work. Like smokes, no 2 flashes are the same, and they all have different situations where they work differently. For example, you can shoot and destroy Reyna's flash, but good luck trying that with a breach flash. Now, we could go down the rabbit hole by telling you guys to use your flashes effectively, and only when you know people are close by, and you should. But creativity is the name of the game with utility, and understanding how a single flash can disrupt even the best laid plans might as well be a superpower. Firstly, I think everyone knows this already, but just in case you don't, turning away from a flash drastically reduces the amount of time you are blinded for, or even negates it completely. This works for all flashes except Omens, as it nearsights anyone it touches, no matter if they're looking at it or not. If you're playing an agent like Breach or Phoenix with more traditional flashes, there are some very creative ways you can use your flashes to catch people off guard. The first thing you need to know is that especially with Phoenix flashes, people will get scared and start to call for rotate or say that they are getting pushed really hard because one tiny ball of light came flying around a corner. Flashes reduce people's IQ by around 95%, so take advantage of that. If you can bait out a push with a couple flashes while having your team walk towards the other side, great. If you really want to get big brain, you can even miss a flash on purpose and fake footsteps like you're running away to try and get someone to peek into you thinking it's a free kill. With more exotic flashes like Reyna or Omen, take advantage of the noise people make while running around trying to what they think is a safe area. It won't work 100% of the time, but it's a good litmus test for figuring out who on the enemy team hasn't been watching pro guides. In all seriousness, don't hang on to your flashes during rounds. Use them, but make sure you're using them in a way that you actually gain something. Sure, flashing a corner and pushing in is the most one-dimensional use of a flash ever, but if that is what's working for you in your games, then keep at it. One thing to keep in mind about using utility, or really any strategy for that matter, is that you can never rely on it. You always have to be willing to change up how you approach situations if you see something isn't working. Just like how you hopefully wouldn't peek into an op or mid every round, you shouldn't be using the same flash in the same way every round, lest you enjoy spectating others. Sometimes, though, you need that extra bit of help to get you to where you want to be. If that sounds like you, then just be sure to check out ProGuides.com, where we have some of the best coaches in Valorant just waiting to help you out. Whether it be mechanics, game sense, or good old-fashioned aim, our coaches are here to help you with whatever you need to climb the ranks. Check it out in the link in the description below. To keep things simple, we're going to be calling everything in this category a molly or incendiary, just because it's easier to talk about that way. What we're referring to, though, is Brimstone's Incendiary, Phoenix's Hot Hands, Viper's Snakebite, and Raze's Everything. Area of Denial abilities are arguably some of the strongest in the game because of how they can force a team to burn time or have an important pathway blocked off. Sure, you can try to pull out one of your abilities in the middle of a rush, but good luck getting it off. In case you didn't quite get that, try to stop pulling out and using mollies and area of denial abilities at choke points when the enemy team is executing a rush, because one of these following things are going to happen. You are either going to look like a fool holding an ability when their jet swings that corner with a Vandal in hand, or you're going to get the utility off and realize that the entire enemy team is on site, and oh yeah, Jet is going to swing you with a Vandal. Instead, if you want to use mollies to stop a rush, either have it equipped and ready to use the second you hear the rush coming, or just give them the space and instead molly off another important angle, like maybe default plant on site or close to it so you don't get pushed. Area of denial abilities also don't need to be used just to prevent rushes either. If you get a good hang on how the enemies play, feel free to use your abilities to prevent enemies from taking early map control. Tossing a Raze grenade or Phoenix Hot Hands into B-Link on split is a good way to make sure that you secure mid control early in the round as a defender. If you're playing an agent like Brimstone, you can go one step further and maybe even find some awesome lineups to use. There are some really useful lineups that you can use in post-plant situations as Brimstone. For Haven A-Site, for example, you can sit on the sandbags all the way at A long and line up the tip of your molly icon with the top right corner of the stone pillars in the background. Use the first one from the right for an A long plant and use the second one from the right for an A short plant. Even learning a couple of these mollies as a Brimstone opens up a lot of new ways to play mind games with your enemies, since you can just toss out a molly to cover the bomb, die while it's still traveling, and still win the round. I've said it before, but I will say it again. Creativity is the name of the game with utility, and the better you can learn how to use utility more creatively in ways that others won't expect, the easier it will be to win rounds and, in turn, games. So far, we have only really talked about how to use utility creatively as an individual, the plays that you can make if you're solo queuing. While these solo utility plays are effective, to get the most out of utility, you need to use them in conjunction with other people's abilities. If you watch any professional matches, then you might have seen some combinations to really burn the competition. Obviously, not everyone in your team is going to be on the same page, which is why we always advocate at least duo queuing, so you know that you at least have one team that you can rely on. However, even if you're solo queuing, you can still take control and lead the team. Taking a few extra seconds in the buy phase to ask people if they want to help you do something cool is a much better way of approaching asking people to do things in game than yelling about how you managed to win a 1v1 against an immortal player, so everyone needs to listen to you or else. Creative doesn't mean complex, by the way. So something as simple as a site fake could be all that's needed to throw your enemies off their game. Well guys, that's all we have for you today. If you liked this video, be sure to drop a like, and if you're feeling extra zesty, maybe even consider hitting that subscribe. Don't forget to check out ProGuides.com. Spike down, peace. Remember to stay safe out there, and until next time, peace.
My ultimate's not ready. Huh. Careful now. Huh. My ultimate's not ready. Going up.
Well, this might be the most interesting map we get in Valorant for a while. No, for real. This might be the most divisive competitive FPS map we have gotten in any first-person shooter video game so far. Fracture is looking to shake up how we see maps in Valorant, and I think the devs did a really good job of subverting our expectations of what a Valorant map is supposed to be.
Planted.
What is going on, Pro Guides family? It is your host, Sergeant Frost, and today we have a Fracture map rundown for you guys. There's a lot to cover with this map, so let's hop right into it. Alright guys, so here's what's on the agenda today for how we're going to break down this map. First off, we're going to talk about 5 things you need to know about this map for when you hop in it on day 1. There are some mechanics that are unique to this map, and also have some interesting factors to keep in mind. Then we will talk about the map's A and B bomb sites and the middle portion of the map. And finally, we will end it off discussing agents and considering how the map might be played. Of course, these are our opinions on how the map might be played, and since it's so different, there's a lot of room for discussion. So feel free to let us know what your thoughts are on this map in the comment section down below. Fracture is a map that will define how Valorant can be played in more ways than one. The devs are clearly trying to push boundaries of gameplay flow and how a map should be played in theory. Fracture is roughly shaped like an H, and it's a bit on the larger side of maps, but we will get more into the map size a little bit later. The first thing you will need to know before hopping into Fracture is the map's gimmick, ziplines. Ziplines have become commonplace in Valorant, but Fracture ziplines are built a bit different. First, there are two ziplines. Depending on which side of the map you're on, only one of the ziplines can transport you to the other side. It's also worth mentioning that attackers can use the ziplines during the buy phase to get onto either side of the map. Secondly, these ziplines are a one-way trip that you can't stop on. Other ziplines in Valorant allow you to control the speed, direction, and status of your weapon while using the zipline. Fracture ziplines don't work like that, unfortunately. Once you get on one of the ziplines, it will take you to the other side at a very high speed, and you cannot stop it, nor can you control the speed at which you are traveling. These ziplines are your best option for rotating around the map safely for both attackers and defenders. Fracture is shaped kind of like a maze, and the ziplines are there to give you a quick opportunity to reach the other side of the map in a hurry. Before we move on with the video, let's get to our question of the day. Today's question is, what are your thoughts on the ziplines and attackers having access to both sides of the map off spawn? Personally, I didn't really like the idea of attackers spawning anywhere and using the ziplines to get away, but after playing on the map and giving it some thought, I kind of like this new gameplay concept. This could really shake up how Valorant is played and how we approach maps in the future. Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Now, let's get right back into the video. The second nuance of this map are the automatic doors in the map. Let's quickly talk about this automatic door located in A main hallways that connect mid and how it can affect how attackers go for map control. Right now, A main hallways looks to be a high traffic area for the defenders, as it is a small enclosed space that
Last player
lock down
standing.
utility.
Spike
With that being
down
said,
A.
the map design has allowed for the attackers to have an alternative route to get into A site, along with a quicker way to sneak into mid. The only way they can do that is through these automatic doors. Just like the teleporter doors we are familiar with on the map Bind, Fracture has one set of these doors that links A main hallway with the mid section of the map. This one map feature could make for some really interesting takes when attackers are going for map control. We're going to have to see how these doors will affect the map's flow when this map is released. The third nuance about this map are the spawns. The spawns for the map Fracture is what separates this map from the rest of the maps in the game. Attackers can go to either side of the map through the ziplines during the buy phase, and the defenders start off spawning in the middle of the map horizontally. This gameplay change will drastically affect the pace of this map and how you can go for map control as well. In order for this map design to work, Fracture was built to kind of resemble a long maze, where instead of the map having a large wide open area like Breeze or Haven, it's instead connected by seemingly never-ending hallways, which makes the map feel like a large circle when moving around it. A notable map comparison for you CSGO veterans out there is that Fracture kind of feels like Inferno and pre-rework Cobblestone in its map design. It honestly might play like those maps too. Fracture seems like a map that will require a good amount of coordination on the attacker side, and will definitely require quick thinking on the defender side. With its release right around the corner, if you're looking to get a leg up on your competition in Act 2, make sure to book a session with one of our Radiant and Immortal level coaches on ProGuides.com to start preparing immediately. We've got an awesome free trial going on right now, so if you click the link in the description, you'll be able to gain access to hundreds of lessons from your favorite pros for 3 days, and also a free coaching session as well. If you're serious about playing in Act 2, you won't regret shooting up the puzzle. The fourth nuance of this map is the way you guys are thinking. Fracture is said to be
Last player standing.
it feels like a maze in the shape of a circle when you are walking around it. Technically, Fracture is one of the bigger maps if you look down on it from a bird's eye view. But in reality, this big map actually plays really small. This map has a lot of short distance engagements that can happen right off spawn. If you're a player that was never a fan of the cross-map Vandal battles on Breeze and Icebox, Fracture is going to give you a reason to start carrying around the Phantom a lot more. There are tons of corridors, little hiding spots, elevated perches, ramps, closing doors, and more on this map. It makes this big map feel almost claustrophobic when walking around it, since a gunfight can happen in close quarters without any warning most of the time. The fifth and final nuance of this map is small, but it's something you should definitely know about, and that is that there are 4 ult orbs on this map. Due to the fact that attackers are spawning on either side of the map, the devs have appropriated the map to have 4 ultimate orbs available for both sides to take. The orbs are going to be located in A pit, B tree, and A hall. A meta tactic that could form on this map is for the attackers to get an agent with a high priority ultimate to go around the map farming the orbs every single round to accelerate their ultimate economy. Personally, I could see an attacking team getting their Killjoy, Sage, or Viper to maneuver around the map on farming all the ultimate orbs so that they can get their ultimate every other round. Is this
My
strategy
ultimate
practical?
going up.
Probably not. Is it something that teams can try to fight for to give their team an ultimate advantage? Definitely. So keep that in mind when playing on Fracture. Now that we've covered some of the main things you need to know, let's analyze the
No
A side a
charges
little
left.
bit. There's a lot to say about this side of the map, mostly because this site has 2 levels. This bomb site definitely has the most
Spike
depth out of
planted.
both of the bomb sites on this map. Firstly, because A site is very open and is exposed to 4 different entry points, which means
One
an enemy
enemy
can walk
remaining.
up behind you if your head isn't on a swivel. Secondly, A site has 2 different levels you can plant on, and depending on where you plant, it will heavily dictate how and where you can defend from in post-plant. For example, if you were to plant in the under level of A site, you most likely would either have to back up to A main, A link, or A halls. These 3 positions are on the ground level, and they are secure places that you can not only watch the flank from, but also defend the spike plant as well. A drop is not the best spot to hide in for post plant on A site, mostly because it is a predictable spot due to its elevation. On top of the fact that you would most likely completely have your back to attacker spawn, and a defender who could be on the long flank would most likely see you before you see them. If you were to plant on the upper level of A site, you would have a little cover to plant safely, but there's no safe place to hide on the top platform. However, that also means it would be really hard to defuse, and most post-plant setups can be really strong here. A site is the bomb site of interest for me personally, because depending on agent team comps, this bomb site has to be approached quite differently. Unlike A site, B site is completely open for anyone in the area to see. The only cover you have is a set of Radianite boxes and a small cave of a cubby for you to plant in as well. B site does not offer much protection for any post-plant attackers, so this bomb site is probably going to be often played as a retake.
Keep up.
The openness of the general area of B site means that you can't sit still and only hold one angle the entire round. You need to get teammates to help you manage the entrances to the site. Site if you're not careful. I can imagine this map will call for multiple sentinels if you want to be able to hold back the attackers. That can wall off an entrance for 40 seconds or worry about the other entrances would make your life a lot easier, and it might often be necessary. Maybe the meta can evolve into attackers prioritizing A site and leaving B site as a second option. I can honestly see a lot of innovation for this site. It's basically a blank canvas with teams to either crack with cool strategies or defend with sneaky setups. Normally, people can guess what agents would be strong on certain maps, but since Fracture is quite a different style, it's hard to really say which playstyle will flourish the most. For example, if one team runs into a very sentinel and controller heavy conservative defensive minded comp, then that team could make the map feel like a fortress and it might make it very defender sided. But if a team is very aggressive and plays liberally with a
Spike
duelist and
planted.
initiator heavy comp, then I could also see bomb sites cracking open easily due to attackers having access to easy splits. Fracture's bomb sites look difficult to defend on paper, so an aggressive team comp could rush a site every round and would presumably take it easily. Like I said earlier, I really want to see how this map evolves over time. But from first impressions, controllers and sentinels will be heavily favored on this map due to their site denial capabilities. Attackers start with the upper hand on this map, so
One
want
enemy
to find a
remaining.
way to either gather information or let utility stall one side of a site split. Agents like Killjoy, Sage, Cypher, Viper, and Astra will have a great time on this map. All of their site denial abilities will allow them to section off a part of the map so that they can focus on the other. While I can't say that any particular agents will perform poorly on this map, I feel like duelists may have a bit of a tougher time than other classes. Fracture is designed in a way where there are a lot of close angles around the map and many spots for a camping defender to hide in, and that spells trouble for duelists who are entry fragging. More likely than not, entries will have a bad time getting into sight with the amount of positions open. Duelists without mobility will likely suffer a lot as well. As usual, I can definitely see Jet being crucial for site takes with how easily she can create space with a smoke dash combo. Well guys, that's all we have for our Fracture map rundown. If you enjoyed this video or want to see more of this, make sure to drop us a like and subscribe to keep up to date with the daily uploads. Also, don't forget to check out our website for the very best on-demand coaching. This has been your host, Sergeant Fragging. Thank you all again.
Joke's over! You're dead! Careful now.
Take flight.
Last player standing.
What's up, everybody? Hope you guys are having a fine day so far. It's Stray once again back with another video. Today, we'll be talking about 11 terms you have to know in Valorant if you want to win. If you don't come from a CSGO background, you might want to take notes on this video as we're going to cover all the essentials. Keep these terms in your mind because you'll be hearing these quite often. As you all know, we always have our question of the day to start off our video. Our question today is, what do you think of Riot adding 6 agents per year? I personally feel like that might be a little too much, as balancing and power creep might become a big issue as we've seen in other games. From what I have seen though, the Valorant dev team has been doing such a great job on balancing things, but as more and more agents and abilities come out, it's going to make that job a lot more difficult. I do think it's doable and the game is currently in a good state, but with more additions, I hope they don't change the dynamic too much that strays away from the game we know and love. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. Diving straight into our video, first up on the list is entry fragging. This is something teams always want to have on their squad on the offensive end. Entry fragging is the act of leading your team to clear a hot zone and take first contact when executing into an important area of the map or site with the team. Entry fraggers are normally the most aggressive players on the team, looking to make plays and opening up the round for their team through first bloods. They're the ones pressing W and have the most risk of dying. Normally they are a duelist such as Phoenix or Jet, but actually any agent can do it, just duelists tend to be a little bit better at it. Now I do want to make a distinction between entry fragging and getting a pick, as they are a little different. Entering normally implies you're moving forward into an important part of the map or bomb site and opening it up by killing a defender. Picks on the other hand can open up spike sites or areas, but generally picks happen further away, so it's harder to capitalize on them. If you are a more inexperienced player, remember not to get stuck in choke points and push W. It's better that you give the team a chance by going in first onto the site rather than getting stuck and dying altogether in the choke. In second, following up entry is trading. How
10 seconds
appropriate,
left.
because the person trading is always moving closely behind the entry fragger. Trading is a very important concept to understand in Valorant. If you don't trade,
Spike
it becomes
down
very
A.
difficult to win
Clutch.
rounds. Trading is when you're following a teammate into a dangerous area that has not been cleared yet. That teammate might get a kill, or they might not. Traders are the insurance that even though the guy who went in first died, the person following him will still get a return kill. Hopefully. Of course, it's not always the case, but it's still the most optimal way of getting your team an advantage. In any strategic game, sacrifice are sometimes a necessity, but you have to ensure you gain something out of them. By trading on the offensive end, you're weakening the defender's hold because they have much more ground they need to cover and watch. With less defenders, the defense becomes more thinly spread. It's almost always better to trade 1-for-1 as on the attacking side. By trading out, you open up sites a lot more, leading to more spike plants. And after you get the spike down, you need to get in position for the post plant, which is third on the list. After you plant, well, it's called the post plant because it's after the plant. It's pretty intuitive. But what's not intuitive is that after you plant, you need to get into a favorable spot that will secure you the round. They normally refer to this as a post-plant position. Good post-plant positions will help cut off defender rotations, secure important parts of the map, and you're able to peek whoever is defusing the spike from that spot. An example I would like to give is on Haven C, where you plant the spike for C long, a classic position where you can go hide in cubby or long C to wait for the bomb tap. After they tap the defuse, you want to try gather info if they're sticking the defuse or not. If they aren't, you just have to wait for the tap again and wait like 2 to 3 seconds before peeking to check. Getting good and understanding post-plant positions will likely help secure a lot more of your attacking rounds when you do get the spike down. And coming in number 4, it's the ECO, short for economy round. This is a very standard term you have to know because coordinating buys in Valorant is so important. You don't want to be that guy that keeps buying and can never afford full equipment on your team's buy round. Eco rounds are necessary because you want to save up for a coordinated buy with better guns such as assault rifles and operators. In lower elo, it might not matter as much for what gun you use, but the higher up you go, you'll notice assault rifles are prevalent for a reason. Higher tier players will completely destroy you with their Phantom if you're using a Stinger. The assault rifle's time to kill is so much better than any other gun with a well-placed headshot, and it's way easier to get multi-kills with them. Along with the operator, well, you probably already know the feeling of getting one shot with no chance of fighting back. Remember, when it looks like your team isn't able to buy, but you still have a little extra, feel free to buy something small like a pistol or whatnot. Just don't be that person and full buy every round. In our number 5 slot, we have lurking. Lurking is when your team is executing on the other side of the map and the lurker is playing sneakily on the other one to get a kill on an unsuspecting defender. The lurker can also flank around after the post plant and get huge kills to secure the round for their team. Don't get this confused with baiting. Lurking done right is masterful and will secure your team the round. If poorly executed with bad timing, then it becomes baiting and won't achieve anything but hatreds towards that lurker. If you're finding yourself last alive every round, you're doing it wrong. Make sure you pace yourself properly to put yourself in positions to do something before all of your teammates die. In 6, just as we previously mentioned, is baiting. Baiting is when you sit back and do nothing while your teammates die. Most often when your teammates die and they get angry, they will probably call you a baiter. Baiting is generally bad, but there are some situations where it could be used to secure a round. Those are very few and far between though. If you're sitting back and watching your teammates die, you're probably not being very useful in trading. I want to tell you to get in there and help your teammate out and try to get that return frag. Of course, sometimes it's not always your fault, as you might have gotten flashed or somebody was flanking, but try to always be proactive and accompany your teammates to get control of areas on important areas of the map. If you feel like you're wrongly accused, try to explain what happened to your teammates, but if they don't like being civil, feel free to mute them. For number 7, we have defaulting. Default setup is used for both attackers and defenders alike. On defense, you want to split up your team in a way to watch every single angle so attackers can't slip through any cracks and get onto site. Such as for split, you want 1B, 2 mid, and 2A. That's an ideal default setup for split. Of course, where you position agents matter a lot, but I won't get too much in detail about that. On the attacker side, defaulting is actually super important if you keep getting pushed. If you notice you're getting flanked almost every round by defenders pushing, you have to default and hold the push. Defaulting is a great way of getting picks on aggressive defenders. After you get a pick, you can start analyzing the map to see where they have the least amount of manpower and hit that site. Send more people to important areas of the map on default, like split A main or ascent mid, areas where there's most likely to have more gunfights. Remember to not always have 5 people in an area unless you're fast pushing. The slower you are, the higher chance the enemy will flank you from behind. Up on 8, it's retaking.
Spike down B.
Retaking is for the defenders. When attackers quickly get onto the spike site and the defenders just play passively, waiting for their teammates to retake the site, that's known as retaking. Normally you would want to try and get some picks onto attackers running to the site, but sometimes it's simply not that easy. You might get flashed, smoked, and mollied out, so you have to play for your safety first. By playing further back and waiting for your teammates to come, you can play a more passive angle and buy time for teammates to come after smokes and everything wears out.
Left.
Retaking is very underrated, as people think you need to get kills when attackers are coming in. Sometimes it's just to play for your own life and buy time for the rotations. On the 9th, we have tapping and sticking, 2 peas in a pod. Tapping is when the defender taps the defuse, either to fake or stick, to fully hold the defuse. For defenders, when you get on the site for a retake, you have to first tap the defuse, as attackers can just simply hide. Until you threaten them with a chance of sticking the defuse, they won't peek out. So you have to force them out through tapping. After tapping, you have to keep killing attackers and then tapping the bomb again and again until you kill them all. Of course, there are some occasions where you can fully stick it, but for the most part, the ideal situation most of the time is probably to get the defuse to half on the bar and then trying to kill the remaining opponents. For the attackers, if defenders are tapping the bomb, you can use utility to clear them off of it. There are a lot of ways to clear the diffuser. Mollies from Brim, Phoenix, and Viper are great ways to deter defenders and buy time for the spike to explode, as well as something like Cypher Spy Cam that can check if they are sticking the defuse or not. There are also a lot of ultimates that can stop the defuse. Some agents that are great for stopping the defuse with their ultimate are Breach, Sova, Raze, and Brimstone. And for our 10th, we have Rotation. Rotations is when you have to switch position to another part of the map. For defenders, you have to know how and when to rotate. A clear-cut example would be when an ally dies on another site and you see 3 or more enemies with the spike entering onto that site. That's a clear and defined time to rotate to help supplement your defense. Of course, as always though, it's not always so clear-cut. Let's say your teammate dies, but you don't see spike and it doesn't seem like a rush. Well, they could be circling around back to your site or just waiting it out to hit that same site. Very hard to say unless you have more information, like a teammate pushing an area or you spot all of them with Sova drone or Cypher Cam. For the most part, when you want to rotate, it depends on 3 factors. If you see the spike, 3+ enemies, or you see a lot of ultimates being used. At the same time though, if you don't see the spike, you might still want to have a dedicated person at each site. If it looks like your teammate is rotating and nobody has died yet, you should still be guarding around your site, as there could be a lurker trying to sneak their way in. Switching on to the attacking side, generally you want to rotate when you're getting stuffed by abilities. Examples would be like when you're trying to enter the bomb site, but you're getting stopped by ultimates, smokes, and sage slow. You pretty much have to wait those out unless you have a death wish. Through the time waiting for those utility to run out, you might be able to rotate away and reset to maybe hit another site. Rotating is very effective as it makes opponents stay on their toes and keeps them guessing. And you also might be able to punish a flanker pushed up. And you might have thought the last one was the last one, but we actually have a bonus term you hear quite often. You might have heard
Last player standing. Spike down A.
If you push or dink someone, it means you hit a
Defenders
headshot and they are
win.
heavily hurt. Of course, in this game, they can always run back to their stage. Remember, when you do big damage to somebody, always call it out. It'll allow teammates to go for body shots, and if you're on the attacking side, it'll give you a window to hit the site as the defender Gush will have to rotate for heals. And there you go, 10 terms you need to know in Valorant if you want to win completed. Thank you guys always for sticking around, and we hope you enjoyed and learned from our video. Please consider liking and subscribing to support our work, and if you want to see more videos in the future. We also love reading your comments below, so make sure to answer our question of the day and leave a nice comment if you like. Again, my name is Stray, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day or What's up, everybody? Hope you guys are having a fine day so far. It's Stray once again, back with another video. Today, we'll be talking about 11 terms you have to know in Valorant if you want to win. If you don't come from a CSGO background, you might want to take notes on this video as we're going to cover all the essentials. Keep these terms in your mind because you'll be hearing these quite often. As you all know, we always have our question of the day to start off our video. Our question today is, what do you think of Riot adding 6 agents per year? I personally feel like that might be a little too much, as balancing and power creep might become a big issue as we've seen in other games. From what I have seen though, the Valorant dev team has been doing such a great job on balancing things, but as more and more agents and abilities come out, it's going to make that job a lot more difficult. I do think it's doable and the game is currently in a good state, but with more additions, I hope they don't change the dynamic too much that strays away from the game we know and love. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. Diving straight into our video, first up on the list is entry fragging. This is something teams always want to have on their squad on the offensive end. Entry fragging is the act of leading your team to clear a hot zone and take first contact when executing into an important area of the map or site with the team. Entry fraggers are normally the most aggressive players on the team, looking to make plays and opening up the round for their team through first bloods. They're the ones pressing W and have the most risk of dying. Normally they are a duelist such as Phoenix or Jet, but actually any agent can do it, just duelists tend to be a little bit better at it. Now I do want to make a distinction between entry fragging and getting a pick, as they are a little different. Entering normally implies you're moving forward into an important part of the map or bomb site and opening it up by killing a defender. Picks on the other hand can open up spike sites or areas, but generally picks happen further away, so it's harder to capitalize on them. If you are a more inexperienced player, remember not to get stuck in choke points and push W. It's better that you give the team a chance by going in first onto the site rather than getting stuck and dying altogether in the choke. In second, following up entry is trading. How appropriate, because the person trading is always moving closely behind the entry fragger. Trading is a very important concept to understand in Valorant. If you don't trade, it becomes very difficult to win rounds. Trading is when you're following a teammate into a dangerous area that has not been cleared yet. That teammate might get a kill or they might not. Traders are the insurance that even though the guy who went in first died, the person following him will still get a return kill, hopefully. Of course, it's not always the case, but it's still the most optimal way of getting your team an advantage. In any strategic game, sacrifices are sometimes a necessity, but you have to ensure you gain something out of them. By trading on the offensive end, you're weakening the defender's hold because they have much more ground they need to cover and watch. With less defenders, the defense becomes more thinly spread. It's almost always better to trade 1-for-1 as on the attacking side. By trading out, you open up sites a lot more, leading to more spike plants. And after you get the spike down, you need to get in position for the post plant, which is third on the list. After you plant, well, it's called the post plant because it's after the plant. It's pretty intuitive. But what's not intuitive is that after you plant, you need to get into a favorable spot that will secure you the round. They normally refer to this as a post-plant position. Good post-plant positions will help cut off defender rotations, secure important parts of the map, and you're able to peek whoever is defusing the spike from that spot. An example I would like to give is on Haven C, where you plant the spike for C long. A classic position where you can go hide in cubby or long C to wait for the bomb tap. After they tap the defuse, you want to try gather info if they're sticking the defuse or not. If they aren't, you just have to wait for the tap again and wait like 2 to 3 seconds before peeking to check. Getting good and understanding post-plant positions will likely help secure a lot more of your attacking rounds when you do get the spike down. And coming in number 4, it's the ECO, short for economy round. This is a very standard term you have to know because coordinating buys in Valorant is so important. You don't want to be that guy that keeps buying and can never afford full equipment on your team's buy round. Eco rounds are necessary because you want to save up for a coordinated buy with better guns such as assault rifles and operators. In lower elo, it might not matter as much for what gun you use, but the higher up you go, you'll notice assault rifles are prevalent for a reason. Higher tier players will completely destroy you with their Phantom if you're using a Stinger. The assault rifle's time to kill is so much better than any other gun with a well-placed headshot, and it's way easier to get multi-kills with them. Along with the operator, well, you probably already know the feeling of getting one shot with no chance of fighting back. Remember, when it looks like your team isn't able to buy, but you still have a little extra, feel free to buy something small like a pistol or whatnot. Just don't be that person and full buy every round. In our number 5 slot, we have Lurking. Lurking is when your team is executing on the other side of the map and the lurker is playing sneakily on the other one to get a kill on an unsuspecting defender. The lurker can also flank around after the post plant and get huge kills to secure the round for their team. Don't get this confused with baiting. Lurking done right is masterful and will secure your team the round. If poorly executed with bad timing, then it becomes baiting and won't achieve anything but hatreds towards that lurker. If you're finding yourself last alive every round, you're doing it wrong. Make sure you pace yourself properly to put yourself in positions to do something before all of your teammates die. In 6, just as we previously mentioned, is baiting. Baiting is when you sit back and do nothing while your teammates die. Most often, when your teammates die and they get angry, they will probably call you a baiter. Baiting is generally bad, but there are some situations where it could be used to secure a round. Those are very few and far between though. If you're sitting back and watching your teammates die, you're probably not being very useful in trading. I want to tell you to get in there and help your teammate out and try to get that return frag. Of course, sometimes it's not always your fault as you might have gotten flash or somebody was flanking, but try to always be proactive and accompany your teammates to get control of areas on important areas of the map. If you feel like you're wrongly accused, try to explain what happened to your teammates, but if they don't like being civil, feel free to mute them. For number 7, we have defaulting. Default setup is used for both attackers and defenders alike. On defense, you want to split up your team in a way to watch every single angle so attackers can't slip through any cracks and get onto site. Such as for split, you want 1B, 2 mid, and 2A. That's an ideal default setup for split. Of course, where you position agents matter a lot, but I won't get too much in detail about that. On the attacker side, defaulting is actually super important if you keep getting pushed. If you notice you're getting flanked almost every round by defenders pushing, you have to default and hold the push. Defaulting is a great way of getting picks on aggressive defenders. After you get a pick, you can start analyzing the map to see where they have the least amount of manpower and hit that site. Send more people to important areas of the map on default like split A main or ascent mid, areas where there's most likely to have more gunfights. Remember to not always have 5 people in an area unless you're fast pushing. The slower you are, the higher chance the enemy will flank you from behind. Up on 8, it's retaking. Retaking is for the defenders. When attackers quickly get onto the spike site and the defenders just play passively, waiting for their teammates to retake the site, that's known as retaking. Normally you would want to try and get some picks onto attackers running to the site, but sometimes it's simply not that easy. You might get flashed, smoked, and mollied out, so you have to play for your safety first. By playing further back and waiting for your teammates to come, you can play a more passive angle and buy time for teammates to come after smokes and everything wears out. Retaking is very underrated as people think you need to get kills when attackers are coming in. Sometimes it's just to play for your own life and buy time for the rotations. On the 9th, we have tapping and sticking, 2 peas in a pod. Tapping is when the defender taps the defuse either to fake or stick to fully hold the defuse. For defenders, when you get on the site for a retake, you have to first tap the defuse as attackers can just simply hide. Until you threaten them with the chance of sticking the defuse, they won't peek out. So you have to force them out through tapping. After tapping, you have to keep killing attackers and then tapping the bomb again and again until you kill them all. Of course, there are some occasions where you can fully stick it, but for the most part, the ideal situation most of the time is probably to get the defuse to half on the bar and then trying to kill the remaining opponents. For the attackers, if defenders are tapping the bomb, you can use utility to clear them off of it. There are a lot of ways to clear the diffuser. Mollies from Brim, Phoenix, and Viper are great ways to deter defenders and buy time for the spike to explode, as well as something like Cypher Spy Cam that can check if they are sticking the defuse or not. There are also a lot of ultimates that can stop the defuse. Some agents that are great for stopping the defuse with their ultimate are Breach, Sova, Raze, and Brimstone. And for our 10th, we have rotations. Rotations is when you have to switch position to another part of the map. For defenders, you have to know how and when to rotate. A clear-cut example would be when an ally dies on another site and you see 3 or more enemies with a spike entering onto that site. That's a clear and defined time to rotate to help supplement your defense. Of course, as always though, it's not always so clear-cut. Let's say your teammate dies, but you don't see spike and it doesn't seem like a rush. Well, they could be circling around back to your site or just waiting it out to hit that same site. Very hard to say unless you have more information like a teammate pushing an area or you spot all of them with Sova drone or Cypher cam. For the most part, when you want to rotate, it depends on 3 factors. If you see the spike, 3+ enemies, or you see a lot of ultimates being used. At the same time though, if you don't see the spike, you might still want to have a dedicated person at each site. If it looks like your teammate is rotating and nobody has died yet, you should still be guarding around your site as there could be a lurker trying to sneak their way in. Switching on to the attacking side, generally you want to rotate when you're getting stuffed by abilities. Examples would be like when you're trying to enter the bomb site, but you're getting stopped by ultimates, smokes, and sage slow. You pretty much have to wait those out unless you have a death wish. Through the time waiting for those utility to run out, you might be able to rotate away and reset to maybe hit another site. Rotating is very effective as it makes opponents stay on their toes and keeps them guessing. And you also might be able to punish a flanker pushed up. And you might have thought the last one was the last one, but we actually have a bonus term you hear quite often. You might have heard this occasionally with gush or dinked. If you gush or dink someone, it means you hit a headshot and they are heavily hurt. Of course, in this game, they can always run back to their sage. Remember, when you do big damage to somebody, always call it out. It'll allow teammates to go for body shots, and if you're on the attacking side, it'll give you a window to hit the site as the defender gush will have to rotate for heals. And there you go, 10 terms you need to know in Valorant if you want to win completed. Thank you guys always for sticking around, and we hope you enjoyed and learned from our video. Please consider liking and subscribing to support our work and if you want to see more videos in the future.
Do you ever watch your favorite streamer or pro player and wonder how they are so good at Valorant? Well, there isn't one secret tip that has gotten them to where they are now. However, in today's video, I would like to cover some of the techniques I've learned from watching pro players that I believe can translate the best to your gameplay. They're techniques that I actively implement constantly in my gameplay as well, and believe can greatly increase any player's skill level. Regardless of if you're a seasoned veteran of the FPS genre, or someone just starting out looking to learn as much as they can. Hi everyone, my name is Dan, and today I'll be your own personal guide on these techniques. I'm super excited to share with you these useful tips that you can start to actively implement into your gameplay today. I guarantee you that if you learn how to use these techniques, you will improve very quickly and see immediate benefits in your gameplay. If you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure to comment down below which technique you found most interesting or useful. And if you want us to deep dive into your favorite pro player, please let us know. Before we dive straight in, as always, we have our question of the day. What do you guys think about the Guardian buff? Personally, I really like their attempt at making the Guardian a more viable option, but I'm not entirely sure it's enough for me. Before, at 2700, it felt pointless to save those 200 credits instead of using them to purchase a Phantom or Vandal. I'd say the Phantom and Vandal will still be my go-to choice every time, even with the price reduction and bullet penetration buff. However, maybe I'll opt to use the Guardian more often than the Bulldog now that they're more similar in price. If there's one technique you take away from today's video, it's this technique. Being comfortable peeking angles, securing a kill, repositioning and re-peeking from another angle is an imperative skill to learn. This is mostly important on the defender side, but there are many situations where it works just as well on the attacker side. Imagine you're defending a bomb site from a specific spot/angle. Once you secure a kill, many players feel panicked to re-peek the same angle. Higher level players will know your location and expect you to be playing around the same angle you just peeked. However, if you can start thinking about how you can reposition right away or possibly use your abilities to do so, it will allow you to continue to secure more kills on the enemies flooding onto the site. Some agents that are especially good at this are Reyna, Jett, and Raze. What each of these share in common is the ability to quickly close distance with one of their abilities. For example, when Reyna secures a kill, she should grab Dismiss Orb to reposition and play a different angle. On the other hand, Jett can play aggressively and use her dash to reposition behind cover. Jett can also use her smokes and play inside them to secure some cheeky kills. Finally, Raze is probably the most versatile of the three. She can peek aggressively and fall back with her Blast Pack. She can also use Blast Pack to gain vertical distance or threaten to damage enemies flooding towards her. This makes it extremely difficult to guess where rays can be, or you could peek into a blast pack right into the face. Okay, do you ever feel like you flash around corners, peek the enemy, and then still die? Do they kill you while they're still flashed? Well, the best way to avoid dying in those situations is to start using your flashes with your teammates or for your teammates. Instead of purely relying on your own flashes, stuns, or blinds, try using them to set up peeks with your teammates. By doing this, even if you die, you create an opportunity to trade. Trading is a very important fundamental that allows you and your team to make aggressive plays without being down a member for free. Obviously, there are situations where even if you peek with your teammate or teammates, you all may still die. But getting into these good habits will allow you to keep pushing your rank. Not actively doing plays like this will most definitely prevent you from hitting your peak rank. On the other hand, you can flash your teammate or teammates in first because it allows for a quicker peek. Why? Because using any ability will not allow you to instantly peek, as there is a delay from swapping back to your weapon and shooting. By flashing for your teammate or teammates, they have their weapon already out and can quickly punish any enemies that may be flashed. A big reason why many people die while peeking with their own flash is because their peek isn't as fast, so the timing for the enemy can be much more predictable. This allows them to pre-fire you before you even get the chance to fire back. Some abilities this tactic applies to are Phoenix's Flash, Breach's Flash, Reyna's Leer, Omen's Blind, and Breach's Tremor. However, you can do this with many abilities in the game other than the ones I just mentioned. Look at how TSM uses their Cypher camera as a mock flash to draw out an enemy while their Jet watches the angle with an operator. Be creative and start thinking about how your abilities can be used to not only help you, but your team in general. If you didn't already notice already, most of the map in Valorant is wall-bangable. Why is this important to know? Because there are certain spots on the map that you can pressure with wall bangs to make enemies uncomfortable playing in those spots. This is especially the case if you damage or kill an enemy holding a spot that is wall bangable. Knowing all the common wall bangable spots can pressure enemies to back off of powerful spots in the map. The most prominent example I want to highlight is mid-window on Haven. As the barrier goes down, you can wallbang any players looking to play at the mid-window. Learning this wallbang makes it extremely risky to peek or rush B as an attacker. If you don't have these wallbangs visualized, you can mark on the minimap to see where you need to shoot the wall for it to land in the intended spot. Now that you know this very useful wallbang, start paying attention to the popular spots people like to play on the map and if they can be wallbanged out of them. Knowing when to cut noise and when to go loud can seem simple at first, but this is something the top-level pros are experts at. Far too often have I seen inexperienced players who either never let go of their shift key or don't know where it's located to begin with. Generally speaking, you want to shift walk when you're not exposing your body to angles that enemies could be holding/watching. When you do expose yourself to those angles, you need to be ready to fight. I see this happen a lot, where players will shift walk around corners and expose themselves to a player and die. So if there's a high chance an enemy player could be there, cutting the noise by shift walking will make you an easier target and get you killed. With the general tips out of the way, let's talk about how pro players like to utilize noise to fake their presence on the map and either double back to take that bomb site or pressure another bomb site. Pressuring certain parts of the map and making noise can cause enemy players to rotate more defenders to hold a site. That's when you stop your aggression and cut all noise by shift walking. Watch how TSM sends their Sage mid to make noise as well as commit her ice wall down to fake a bomb plant mid. Then they simultaneously cut noise while creeping up A. Now, you have the option to lurk and wait for them to peek for information or go somewhere entirely different. Sometimes you can leave one or two players to lurk behind while you send the rest of your team to create pressure someplace else. This technique gets even more interesting when you change which teammates are holding the spike. For example, you can now send 4 players over to the opposing bomb site while your lone player unsuspectedly plants bombs. You could also send those 4 players with spike to plant while the lone player lurks behind and kills the defenders trying to retake the bomb site. Learning how to be comfortable making noise, cutting it when necessary, and playing around that can help to create a lot of pressure for the enemy players without even using much utility. You know what's an absolute delight to hear from any teammates who I play with? The call out, "play off my contact," or "peek after I shoot." This call out can single-handedly win your team rounds as it keeps your teammates on the same page. So many rounds are thrown away when people peek enemies without any communication whatsoever. By calling contact, you ensure that your teammates don't peek until you've engaged in a fight. This allows them to help you at the proper time and prevents them from peeking alone and dying for free. Both play off my contact and peek after I shoot are pretty much the same thing. It's more important you learn one phrase and are comfortable saying it when the situation arises. Most of the maps in Valorant have 4/5 lanes, which means that most players will have one player watching each lane. However, a very common play at a high level is to give up one or two of these lanes by taking full control of another. Notice how TSM is perfectly comfortable doubling down on one lane and giving up another. This works better coupled with a properly set up crossfire or contact call. The best example I can showcase is with Bind. Bind is a 2-bomb site map and 2 lanes per bomb site. When defenders play B bomb site, they usually send one to play hookah and one to play B long. However, when the attackers push any of these lanes as 2 or 3 members, it is highly unlikely one player will be able to hold the lane against multiple enemies. So in this situation, doubling down in hookah or B long to better secure one lane can not only help you live, but allows your team to play retake. If they split push B bomb site with 3 hookah and 2 B long, your team has a much higher chance of winning the round if they give up hookah and play aggressive for B long control. Taking that 2v2 B long fight is much more favorable than a 1v3 in hookah and a 1v2 at B long. As you continue your journey up the ranked system, you will find that operators are extremely powerful. Couple that with a character that excels with the operator like Jett or Reyna, and now you have to constantly worry about aggressive angles they can potentially hold. With that in mind, the operator is a weapon that can be discussed in an entire video, but today, I just want to highlight its ability to hold angles and allow your teammates to push aggressively forward. For example, many top teams currently have defender side strategies that revolve around stacking certain parts of the map. They push forward while an operator posts on an angle and uses cipher tripwires for the spots that aren't being attended to. This allows for riflers to get into sneaky positions, and now the operator can rotate and cover something else. Although these specific plays aren't as viable, especially if you're not queued with friends. However, start paying attention to how you can start traversing the map with the operator and posting up on different angles. If you decide to peek mid with the operator mid, look to swap it to A or B site the next round. At the end of the day, there's no better way to improve your gameplay besides watching it back. By giving yourself time to reflect on the mistakes you made as well as the correct plays you made, you can slowly reinforce good habits and remove potentially harmful habits that can inhibit you from reaching your peak potential. A common mistake I see quite a bit is that players often realize that VOD review is important. I can guarantee you that every top player has or currently reviews their games back in some capacity. On top of watching it yourself, you can always have someone more impartial to watch and give you feedback. If you have friends that are willing to give you constructive criticism, that can also help you grow as a player. It may seem like the professional players you love to watch are at the level they are now simply due to talent, but in reality, these players put the necessary time and energy in, growing themselves to become the best at their game. The techniques I covered in today's video is a fairly simplified explanation on some of the concepts they consistently like to do on a regular basis. Keep in mind that as the playing field grows within Valorant, so too will the
Match found. 3.
One enemy remaining.
4. Our spike carrier is killed.
Spike down, attacker spawn. Last player standing. 30 seconds left. Ten seconds left. Clutch.
Let them try to get through me.
Eyes up.
See ya. Your fault. Three.
One enemy remaining.
4. Ha! You should have seen your faces. Jet, you were the wind. So powerful. Well done.
Let's get the advantage.
Watch this! Enemy killed. One down. 3.
One enemy remaining.
4. Ha! You should have seen your faces.
I'll clip that jet's wings.
Spike down, B. Last player standing.
yourselves. We fight once again. Let's crack
Defenders
them open.
win. only to fall to its corruption.
In this New World Beginner Guide, I'm going to give you a ton of information that will help you get off to the best possible start when the game launches this fall. Having played some 180 hours in the closed beta, I've learned quite a few. Things that aren't inherently obvious, and if known early on can save you quite a bit of trouble. Let's get into what these are. After completing the brief tutorial in New World, you begin on the beach doing some basic quests that'll give you basic gear and introduce you to very basic mechanics. There are some things you can do here even this early to get off to a good start, so let's go through these now. Make sure that you have some healing food at all times. You likely won't have to craft much right away since you can find some from chests as you quest, but you will always want to make sure you've eaten and that you are regaining health. It's very difficult to quest in New World without food because you don't regain health naturally otherwise, and you will eventually die from enemies unless you have health potions, which are not so easy to come by right at the beginning. Food lasts about 20 minutes or so make sure you refresh it about that often. You can craft more at campfires if you need to, and there are boars not too far away you can hunt for meat. Another good tip is to slot a life staff on your second bar so that you can heal yourself when needed. Without many points invested in focus, your heals won't be strong, but they can still be enough to keep you going without having
Do you know what I love? I love games like Valheim that support more than one API. And I love it when you guys subscribe to this channel. And I love to think that one day I'll actually find love. Well, let's focus on that first thing, at least for now, because yeah, it's hard to escape how big Valheim has gotten. So today, let's go over whether or not you should play it in boring old DirectX mode or in the super fancy new hipster Vulkan mode. And the only way to find out is to play it, so let's get into it, shall we? So let's start off by checking out Vulkan Valheim, and we'll be seeing exactly what's going on using this performance overlay courtesy of Nvidia, because it not only tells the FPS but also some other stuff that's going on behind the scenes like CPU and GPU usage. So settings wise, we are going pretty much let's go everything high. We are playing at 3040 by 2160s and then have everything turned on apart from motion blur